Welcome to the Explainer. All right, today we're tackling a piece of the National Electrical Code that's super important, but honestly gets messed up all the time. I'm talking about NEC 2000.4. It's all about the neutral wire, and you really don't want to get this one wrong. We're talking about some serious potential dangers, so let's just jump right in.
Okay, so let's just picture this for a second. You pop open an electrical box, and it's just a complete rat's nest of wires, right? Total spaghetti. You've got your hots, you've got your grounds, everything's in there. But which one of those wires poses the biggest hidden danger if it's not wired up correctly? I bet the answer isn't what you're thinking.
Yep, it's the neutral. It's the one we kind of take for granted. We think of it as the safe wire, but let me tell you, a neutral that's wired wrong can be a ticking time bomb. We're not just talking about a circuit that doesn't work. We're talking about real hazards, fire, shock. This is exactly why the code is so strict about it. So before we dive into the rules, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What is the neutral, really? Just think of a circuit as a simple loop. The hot wire is like the road to your device delivering the power. Well, the neutral wire is the road back. It's the dedicated return path that completes the whole loop. Without it, nothing works. It's absolutely essential.
And here's why this matters so much. This is what happens when it all goes sideways. When different circuits start sharing or, borrowing a neutral wire, that one little return path can get slammed with way too much current. It gets dangerously overloaded. And what happens then? Well, conductors start overheating, and that's a huge fire risk. You've got shock hazards, and you can even fry expensive electronics. And that, right there, is the whole point of NEC 200.4, to stop this from ever happening.
Okay, so that brings us to the first big rule. This is the cornerstone of the whole thing, and you'll find it in section 200.4a. I always think of it as the one-to-one rule. It's pretty much the foundation for all safe neutral wiring.
And it could not be simpler. The principle is this: one neutral, one circuit. That's it. Every single branch circuit needs its own dedicated path back to the panel. No exceptions, no sharing, no borrowing. Period.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. Here is the exact wording right out of the code book. It says, plain as day, neutral conductors shall not be used for more than one branch circuit. I mean, it doesn't get much clearer than that, right? There's zero wiggle room there.
This is a perfect way to see it in action. Over here on the left, that's the right way to do it. See? Circuit A has its hot and its neutral, all bundled up. They're a team. But look over here on the right. That's the problem. You've got two different circuits trying to share one neutral. That poor wire is now carrying the return current for both circuits, and that's how you get dangerous overloads.
All right, so we've got that down. Every circuit gets its own neutral. But what happens when you have a bunch of wires from different circuits all crammed into the same box? That's a super common scenario. Well, that's exactly what the next part of the rule, 200.4b, is all about.
And it's a really good question, isn't it? Because in the real world, you're constantly dealing with multiple circuits in one junction box. The good news is, the code totally gets this. It anticipates the problem and tells us exactly what to do to keep things organized and, more importantly, safe.
So what's the solution? The code says you have to identify which neutral goes with which hot wire. You need to group them together. And it's not picky about how you do it. You can use wire markers, a little piece of tape or numbered labels. You could use zip ties to physically keep them together. Anything that makes it super obvious which wires are a pair.
And again, let's look at the official language. It says the neutral has to be grouped with its ungrounded circuit conductors. Now that's just code speak for its hot wire. The whole idea here is simple. The next person who opens that box needs to be able to see, instantly, which wires go together to make a complete circuit. It makes everything safer and a whole lot easier to troubleshoot down the road.
Now, the code isn't just about making extra work. It's actually pretty practical. So there are two, what I'd call common sense exceptions to this grouping rule. These are situations where you don't need to do it, basically because it's already obvious.
Let's run through them real quick. So exception number 1 is all about when it's just obvious by design. Think about it. If the wires for circuit A come into the box inside one Romex cable, and circuit B's wires come in through a totally separate cable, well, they're already grouped, right? The cable jacket does the work for you. Then there's exception number 2, which is for wires that are just passing through. If the conductors are just running through the back of the box and they're not being cut or connected to anything in there, you don't need to worry about labeling them.
Okay, that was a lot, I know. We've gone through the main rule, the identification rule, and the exceptions. So let's boil it all down. Let's take this whole section and distill it into two super simple principles that every pro should live by. This is how you do safe, clean, and totally compliant work.
Just 2 key things. If you remember these 2, you're pretty much golden. This is your mental checklist for every single job.
All right, here it is, your NEC 204 checklist. Number 1, dedicate. Every single circuit gets its very own dedicated neutral. That's that 1-to-1 rule we talked about. And number 2, identify. If you've got different circuits in the same box, you have to group or label each neutral with its hot wire. That's it, dedicate and identify. If you can do those 2 things every time, you're doing it right.
And that pretty much wraps up our deep dive into NEC 2004.4. You see, the rules themselves aren't that complicated, but man, are they critical for safety. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you open up a junction box, take a second. Look closer. Now that you know what you're looking for, can you spot the violation out in the wild? Thanks for tuning in.